was to turn off the television. Racism equals prejudice equals painting all with a broad brush. All cops, all white people, all black people. Those statements are all wrong. All of them. You cannot paint everyone with a broad brush. That's being prejudiced. That's being racist. My son is a fine man. All four of my sons, especially the one who has the concerns. He agrees with the arrest of the cop who killed Floyd. In fact, everyone that I have spoken to agrees that the cop that killed Floyd should have been arrested and charged with murder. Everybody that I've spoken to. And by the way, this does not include people on Facebook. And by the way, the Minnesota Attorney General, he charged the cop in 4 days, okay? So not only does everybody agree, but the Minnesota Attorney General agreed, okay? He charged that cop in 4 days, and he should have. I've spoken to a lot of people, as I mentioned, none of them on Facebook. I'm talking about people either face-to-face or on the telephone. So real conversations with real human beings, not keyboard warriors. All of them agree that the cop who killed Floyd was wrong. All of them agree that he needs to be tried for his crime. All of them agreed that the peaceful protests justify other injustices. In other words, the peaceful protesters are in the right, and everyone I speak to agrees with them. And all of them agreed that the rioters and the looters have nothing to do with the protesters. They're different. The peaceful protesters versus the rioters and looters, those are two different categories. That's all the people I've spoken to. Not some, not most, all. But that's not what you hear on television. That's not what you hear on Facebook. That's not what you hear on the radio, especially Facebook. In fact, Facebook has just become a cesspool full of morons for the most part. And I shouldn't say for the most part. Many of them are there. How's that? Okay? Basically, everybody who's on Facebook thinks they're Edward R. Murrow. And it's laughable. And actually, you probably have seen, if you saw my Facebook posts, if you follow me on Facebook, you probably haven't seen many posts by me recently. In fact, the majority of them are just promoting my dopey podcast. Folks, I don't watch the television news anymore. I stopped watching television news. Well, I really haven't watched it since Bill O'Reilly left the air. I don't watch CNN or Fox or MSNBC or any of them because I watch the local news. Let me rephrase that. I do watch the local news. I like to hear the local weather, what's going on in town, okay? Local news is not world news. But I don't watch any of the main networks, world news, or any of the cable networks, okay? I read reliable news sources. And if I come upon an article I think is baloney, I just go past it, okay? My son felt better after our conversation because he was feeling guilty, but he knew he had done nothing wrong because he felt people had said disparaging things about him that weren't true. And again, I reminded him, nobody told him this. Knotheads on Facebook and television told him this. And they're not real people. Ignore them. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We live in interesting times. And interesting times are not necessarily bad times, okay? But let's realize what's happened in the last, I would say at least 12 years. We've had a very good run, an outstanding run. And what's happened now is that we've hit a bump in the road. Now, what type of a bump is this? How tough of a bump is this? Is this just a jarring pothole that just bumped us and we're going to say, oh my gosh, that was pretty bad? Is it going to knock our vehicle out of alignment? In other words, we're fine. We're just going to have to fix it later, sometime down the road, and just venture on business as usual. Is this pothole going to flatten a tire? In other words, we have to stop, fix it, and then venture on with a minor interruption. Or is this pothole so big that it's going to snap a tie rod end on this vehicle that's moving forward? That's life. In other words, you snap a tie rod end, you spend time in the shop. It's an expensive fix. It's going to be a while before things are back to normal. Or is the pothole so big that it swallowed the whole car? In other words, things will never be as they were. Ever. Not trying to paint a bleak picture. I'm just trying to ask a question. Let's consider our leadership. President Trump has been fairly quiet, but when he has addressed COVID-19, he says silly things. And when he addresses the riot, he certainly hasn't things that are, he said divisive things, in my opinion. He said nothing that's going to unify the country. As president, I believe he needs to get on the radio, the television, or both, and say something that's going to unify the people. And he's done none of that. President Obama is speaking out. But what's funny is he never did that during the Ferguson riots. I've said this before. That was President Obama's biggest flaw. And that the grade he gets is not A, B, C, D, or F. It's I for incomplete. He had a chance in 8 years to bring the country together when it comes to matters of race. And he passed on it. And now he wants to talk about it. Sorry, too little, too late. You had your chance. But we have Joe Biden, who's speaking out against racial inequality. He's the Democratic nominee, or at least he will be. Okay, I don't think he is officially, but he will be. In my opinion, I truly believe, no disrespect intended, but I believe that Joe Biden suffers from some stage of senility. Look at what he says when he's on television. I believe he's just a tool for the DNC. That's what I believe. Translation, government is not going to fix this. They're not going to lead. They're not going to fix us. They're not going to lead us out of the COVID-19 pandemic, nor are they going to fix the racial bias that leaded to the Floyd killings and the riots. Again, the protesters don't equal the rioters and the looters. Different people. The protesters aren't the problem. The rioters and looters are the problem. The fact that police forces are still allowed to do what they did to Mr. Floyd are the problems, okay? So who's going to fix this? It's not government. We have to do it. Me and you. We have to do it. How, you ask? Well, of course I'm going to tell you. Would I have a podcast that's going into its 39th minute and not tell you how to fix the problem? 2 problems, 2 solutions. The first one, the COVID-19, the coronavirus, the pandemic. How do we fix that? The way we fix most things. The way we fix most things throughout history. Compromise. Shelter in place versus just go back to normal. In other words, do we stay hunkered down and shuddering in our homes for the next 18 months or until they find a vaccine? Or do we say, F it, let's just go back in business as usual? How about neither? Or how about a little bit of both? How about wearing a mask in public when you're close to people so you don't spread your disease if you have it? If you're asymptomatic, you don't know if you have it or not, by the way. How about if you practice good social distancing skills? How about if you wash your hands, as you always should have anyway? How about if you go back to work instead of sitting at home and huddling like a baby? How about if you get healthy? How about if you make sure you're eating right, you're getting your weight right, you're getting your blood pressure right, so if you get COVID-19, you won't have to have a ventilator shoved down your throat and die. How about if you just be smart? Now, if you're old or ill or infirm, continue to shelter in place because you're at real risk. Because over 80% of all people in St. Charles County that have died of COVID-19 have been in nursing homes or over the age of 80. That's a lot, people. That's a whole lot. Basically, if you're healthy and young and you get it, you're probably going to be fine. Accept that. Compromise is the way we get past this COVID-19. The racial bias. Yes, racial bias does exist. I've said this before. I will always say that. Racial bias exists in this country. But I also believe things are getting better. They're absolutely getting better. The civil unrest we had in the late 60s is nothing compared to the civil unrest we're having today. And why? Because things are better today. We are improving on how we treat each other. So let's keep moving the ball with the understanding that we will never get there. What you say? What are you saying, Strong? I'm going to say that again, and please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It's getting better. We're improving on how we treat each other every day. Let's keep moving the ball with the understanding that we will never get there. In other words, we are never going to totally eliminate racial bias in this country. It'll never happen. We're always going to look at one another who are not like us and think, he's not like me, so I'm going to be suspect. Just because that thought goes through your mind doesn't mean you have to act on it. In fact, the church teaches us, the Catholic Church, that you can't control the thoughts that go into your mind, but you have the free will to do the right thing. Officer Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, was charged recently now with second-degree murder. The other three cops have been charged with aiding and abetting. This took a while, but again, you say, well, it took too long to charge them. We had to riot and burn to make people. No, that's not why they did that. The DA needs to be sure that all the charges will stick, to be sure he can obtain a conviction. It does not matter. It does not matter at all if he charges the policeman with a crime and then can't prove it in court and they walk. That does no good. Okay. Again, we're getting there, people. Things are definitely better. Do they need to get better still? Absolutely. They do need to get better. But they're getting better and better all the time. We need to continue to move the ball. Looting and burning buildings does not help. Demanding reparations does not help. Accepting nothing short of equal justice for all people and accepting nothing less will get us closer. We have to accept nothing less than equal justice for all people. And it's like anything else, okay? New laws aren't going to change that behavior. There were already laws on the books. It's not lawful for a policeman to put his knee on the throat of a suspect and kill him. That's never been acceptable. Not in my lifetime anyway. But you can't make a new law because that law already exists. And only people deciding to do the right thing always changes behavior. That's the only thing that's going to do it. People have to decide to do the right thing. People will always do what they want to do. They always have. They always will. In fact, that's a famous saying of the mad dog. But things will get better when people decide to do what's right and we get closer to a common goal. So as I wrap up this first trip, business trip, venturing outside of St. Charles County, I look at the world around us and I think things have changed. Things are different. Things are a bit eerie. I'm not going to say scary. I'm going to say eerie and different. Things have changed and they will probably never be the same again. I'll probably never be able to walk into the Hampton Inn and mix my bowl of oatmeal out of the pot, the nice steamy pot, and throw a handful of the almonds that they have there and some of the raisins and throw a little bit of peanut butter in there. I'll probably never be able to do that again. But that's okay. Things always change. Things are going to be better. And if we decide to do the right thing as a people, they'll continue to get better still for each and everybody.